It's interesting. I mean, you talk to a lot of civil rights discussions, and they talk about the whole shifting phenomena of place where we grew up, because we grew up in segregated communities where we lived next door, regardless of income, to maybe the school teacher, the doctor, or the funeral director, or the refuge worker, or the unemployed, the police officer. They all lived in the same neighborhood. I mean, it was just a matter of segregated opportunity, you know what I'm saying? When that opportunity shifted and people did not have a limitation on where they could live, they began to move because their economics allowed them to have mobility. And they decided where they wanted to live and raise their children. That's because the school system got bad. I don't want my kid going to that school. So we created this movement back before. Unless you had people in the families who lived still there, you never went back there. You know, if anything, you made them come to see you, to see how well I'm doing. You know, it's a moving on up phenomenon, you know, and we end up moving on up phenomenon. And there's still a lot of people who are still stuck down here. It amazes me today, even to talk to young people who have never left their community, who've never gone to the other side of the city where they live, much less gone and gotten on a train or airplane or a boat. And I didn't think that could ever happen in 2007. I mean, it happened when, you know, growing up in our neighborhoods. You know, you look at a situation that in 1950s, there were more minority-owned businesses and black-owned than there are today, when there's a lot more opportunity. Why? Because necessity forced that if we want to have access to food or to services, it had to be in a business that was owned by a minority, because nobody was going to come into that neighborhood.
I remember my mama taking me and my brothers to the movie, and we lived 2 blocks from Rhode Island Avenue and 13th Street.
Right.
So you had the Village Theater right there. Well, Rhode Island Avenue was sort of a borderline where it was all black on one side and pretty much white on the other side. And we would pass the Village Theater, and I would say, why don't we go to that movie? And my mom would say, because that's not our movie. Now, I didn't know she meant our being black and white. I thought we owned our own movie. and truthfully, the movie we went to, the Booker T, was a black-owned movie. And so the movie theaters were black-owned, the Booker T was black-owned, the Lincoln, the different names that were African-American names or for Lincoln, were mostly black-owned businesses. And then if you didn't have and here in this city, because that was Washington, D.C., Brenda said her parents would not allow her to go and be put up in the balcony, although it seemed like the balcony might have been the best place to sit, in the segregated movies here.
I thought so.
They would get the movies, and in the church, in the basement of the church, or in the little piece of the church on the side, the black parents would buy the movies or rent the movies or whatever, and have a newsreel thing and show the movies to their kids. So there was a whole kind of another system of community and importance of the children, self-esteem, separated from that racist other kind of reality.
You know, it's always interesting, and to me, when I have friends who say that, you know, I didn't realize that I was poor till I went to first class in sociology, and they started talking about demographics. I didn't know we were poor by income, because, you know, we didn't feel that way. You know, we weren't characterized by the way you would characterize poverty today. You know, it always strikes me that, you know, it's true. People didn't think about it that way. So opportunity provides a lot of things, but it also provides sometimes a way to remove some of the institutions and things that have supported people for a long time.
You know, Roy, you mentioned that Atlanta is one of the most segregated cities in the country. I think of New Orleans as being a much more of an integrated city. So what do you see when you come here as what is it that we're doing wrong that we are so polarized in our black and white communities?
Well, I think that there's a number of things. I mean, it's still the fact that in many cases, people have less today than they may have had before, in a lot of different ways, not just in terms of economics, in terms of opportunity. And so anyone they see that has more than them, that creates a barrier for communication and for other things that happen. So I think that exists. And the fact that people see disparity in the application of distribution systems, meaning that, you know, if you maybe look one way or have more, that they're going to get more, or they see things happening. So, and we tend to reinforce and amplify the differences. And I think that creates a tug on the ability of people to communicate. For example, the low income people now are the ones, majority, who have not been able to come back to this city. I mean, the people who can come back to New Orleans now, those who have some degree of means and whatnot, have come back to the city, and they can spend the money because the insurance company is not going to pay them. But they've got enough liquidity, they can fix up their house, they can put it back in order. The low-income people are still at disadvantage. And then you have the race mongers who want to reinforce the idea that they don't want low-income people back in New Orleans. It's going to be built as a grand city with no poor people and therefore no black people. So you have people who play on that card as well, okay? And so this reinforces, and this continues to keep that inability to dialogue. I think that's really what's happening to a large extent, okay? And there's not enough money to address the rebuilding in the way it should be done, and there's not enough discussion about prioritizing. I mean, I think, for example, the recovery plan that the city has put forth for 18 neighborhoods is a good way to have created a great deal of community discussion and planning and digestion, but there's not enough money to do all of that. I look.
$500 million surplus right now. What did they just announce? The state of Louisiana got like a $500 million surplus.
Is that right?
So there's
That's
money.
the state.
There's not no money.
That's not New Orleans.
It's the state, but I'm still saying.
And most states, I learned,
It ain't no money.
yeah, most state legislators are run by delegates from small communities and hate the big cities within the states. I mean, really, in every state across the country is like that. So the ability to implement those 18 or 17, 18 neighborhood targets is going to be very difficult because there's not enough capital that provides enough flexibility. Everything comes like this. You know, everything comes from their stovepipes. And you got, everyone has a regulation and difficulty, so you can't work across some of these programs to produce the kind of strategic strategies that provide for integrated approaches. You see what I'm saying? And that works to a disadvantage. So it's really how we allocate those resources and what you can do with them. So, I mean, the money that, for example, the federal government puts down through emergency, I mean, if I was a small business person in New Orleans, the worst person I want to see is SBA. Okay? Because they don't acknowledge. You're sitting there with I saw this. I mean, when I was in Los Angeles, other places I've been in civil unrest, and the SBA is there to help small businesses, and they say, well, give me your records so I can see your earnings for the last 5 years. But they were washed out in the flood. Well, I can't help you there. You got to have some way that we can document and determine how much money you're entitled to receive as benefits. Let's get off this soapbox. Let's figure this out. We know enough about a small business and what they may have had in terms of inventory that we can figure out what that is. You know what I'm saying? When we stand on procedures, I have a lecture I should do for SBA called "Somebody Else Can Assist." They didn't like me for that, but
Right now, there are efforts to bring into one room or space the silo people and to look at a problem and see what are the barriers that could be eliminated, or how could we work together. And I noticed in some cases there's like a rigidity that, so we can't do that because. And in other places there is well, we can't do that the way it's structured now, but if the legislature did this, or if we looked at it this way, or if you did that. And I guess I'm just wondering from your, long history of seeing how these things work, how much capacity or ability or how much control, if you had a room that had 10 people over 10 silos that were directors and they decided to work together, how much control would they actually have given federal, state, and other legislative constraints?